Michael Jordan.
Uh-huh.
LeBron James.
Keep going.
Caitlin Clark. Sarah Nurse?
I think Kia.
I think that's it.
Have you ever heard of Magic Johnson?
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. I couldn't tell you anything other than his name though.
Hakeem Olajuwon?
I don't know who that is.
Nick Van Exel?
Don't know who that is.
Maybe that's more of a deep cut. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of I Love This, You Should Too. I'm basketball-loving Indy Randhawa, and with me is my lovely co-host, basketball, I've heard of that sport, Samantha Randhawa.
I do like that I had 2 men and 2 women though. Yeah.
Equal representation. But you're not a big Asia Wilson fan.
I don't know who that is.
The best basketball player.
Good for her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but today we'll each have a couple things of the fortnight, things we've been into recently. And is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
It's my turn. I will let you know which big movie we are getting into for next week. Well, not a big movie. It's a big episode on the movie. It could be a small movie.
Could be a small movie. Could be a short.
No, we don't really do many shorts.
No, we don't.
Here. That's
it's
more a
probably
thing of the week.
A feature-length movie.
It will be feature-length, but there's different sizes of movie.
True.
Like Lord of the Rings, that's
a
6 liters of movie.
Yeah.
That's so much movie.
It's like a boat of a movie.
So I'm going to give you just 355 milliliters of movie.
Just like a single serving of movie?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's my movie size. It's going to be a small one.
Excellent. It's not an epic.
It's going to go down easy. It's like a can of Coke. That's all.
Well, I look forward to that. Do you want to start us off with your thing of the week?
Yes.
Fortnite?
It is not the game Fortnite.
Thing of the fortnight.
Oh, yeah, because we do it every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Thing of the fortnight. Mine is basketball documentaries.
Oh.
Remember a while ago when I was watching so many basketball documentaries and I
Yes.
said, I'll talk about them all rapid fire on the show. And I forgot. And we always were doing themes and stuff, so I never really got around to it. But today is the day because I didn't have anything else. So this jumped to the front of the list.
Nice.
So I am just going to suggest a bunch. I'll give you a quick pitch. Maybe I'll talk for 1 minute. Maybe this will take 45 minutes. I hope not.
Let's go.
My stats might be off because we're talking about basketball and my years might be off. But you know what? That's not what's important right now. We're going to talk basketball documentaries. And I'm going to give them to you in roughly chronological order of when they played. And all of these are on either Netflix, Disney Plus, or Amazon. First is Bill Russell, Legend.
Oh.
This is a new one about Bill Russell. I'm guessing you don't know who that is?
No.
He's amongst the best basketball players ever. That's always debatable, but he has, I think, more championships than anyone because he has 11.
Wow, that's a lot
rings.
of championship.
The documentary, not great. His life story, amazing. So rather than pitch you the documentary, here's a little bit about Bill Russell. So he was from the South. His family moved to California because his dad said he was either going to kill someone or someone was going to kill him. And he needed to get out of there because, super racist. He starts spending a bunch of time at the library because this is the first time he has access to books. But it wasn't until he started playing basketball that things made sense in his mind. And he described it how other people describe painting is how he described basketball. It's just everything fit and he could see how the play works and everything like that. So it was a revelation to him. It's weird to think that Bill Russell lived in a time of lynchings. Lynchings were still happening, and he played for the Boston Celtics. Those seem like different timelines.
Yeah.
Then it's not. It is the same. When he was young, his mother died, and at that time, oftentimes you would go to live with your aunt or your grandma or something, because men weren't single dads very often then. But his dad was like, no, I refuse to give up my children. I'm going to be a single dad. And he did it. And so Bill keeps playing basketball. He literally invents how we play defense.
Oh.
The idea of jumping to block a ball when the other guy's shooting. He invented that. People hadn't thought of it yet.
That seems so obvious.
Yeah.
Get as tall as you can to stop it from flying through the air.
Yeah, so he came up with that. And of course now we're like, yeah, what else would you do? But at the time, nobody jumped.
That's so strange.
Basketball was different, right? And he was also the only black guy playing. So they say, yeah, we're outlawing that. No more jumping. So they tried to outlaw jumping in the NBA. That was the thing that almost happened.
What?
When he got drafted, he was going to get taken first overall, but the Celtics didn't have the first overall pick. So they traded the Ice Capades for Bill Russell.
What?
The owners it was Rochester could have picked Bill Russell, but the Celtics said, we'll give you the Ice Capades to play in your arena, and you give us Bill Russell.
Oh.
So he got traded for the Ice Capades.
That's fun.
So he quickly becomes one of the best players in the league, probably the best at the time. But this is still Boston. Mm-hmm. Boston now. I've been there. It's very racist. Mm-hmm. So at the time, he's this hero. He's winning all these championships, but he can't go walking out on the street because people just throw things at him. His house is getting vandalized. He wasn't even allowed to buy a home in the neighborhoods because they said, no, you can't live here. And he's this hero, but also can't go anywhere. So he starts becoming a civil rights leader because he's always receiving death threats. He goes and teaches basketball camps in Mississippi where it's even worse. And he's just become so disillusioned with all of this. He's one of the best players. He's winning all these championships, but he says, like, I'm playing a children's game and there's serious things going on. And then his coach, Red Auerbach, who was like one of the most famous and best coaches of all times, retires. And who's going to be the new coach? Bill Russell. Is it going to stop playing? Nope. So he's a player coach. He's the first black coach in North American pro sports. Oh. And he's still playing. So he's winning championships as a player and a coach at the same time. And he just had a great career, but it's all this other stuff that makes him so interesting. And then after he retires, he wants nothing to do with Boston. He's a hero there, but he's like, no, you people treat me like garbage. So he didn't even want his jersey retired. The only way he agreed to go to a jersey retirement ceremony was it was just his friends there, no fans. They did it like secretly. They retired his jersey. And he also refused to go accept his Basketball Hall of Fame award because he's like, no, you guys treated me horribly. And just because now you're like, whoops, sorry, that doesn't make it okay. So he's like a scholar, a civil rights leader, a really interesting guy. So Bill Russell, legend, worth watching just for his story. Phi Slamma Jamma. That was one that was about the University of Houston in the 82 to 84 range and how much they changed basketball at the time because you had Clyde the Glide, you had Dream, Hakeem Olajuwon. You're a big fan of his, I remember, right?
Oh, yeah, huge.
You love that Dream Shake?
Yeah, my
Doesn't
favorite.
That sound like a beverage you'd like, though?
It does. It sounds like a milkshake, but it's like purple or pink.
Yeah. I think we might have gone to a bubble tea place called Dream Shake.
Probably. It sounds about right.
And then I made a Hakeem Olajuwon joke. So it talks about them because they went on to have very big careers, but also one of their teammates who had a really big role has like disappeared and they look and find him. So that was kind of interesting. Survive and Advance. This was about the 1983 North Carolina State team, and it overlaps with Phi Slamma Jamma. And I don't want to spoil something that happened in 1983, but it's interesting to see how those two teams are intertwined.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because it's an underdog story and had this team who was not expected to do much and what they were capable of. But it's most interesting if you know Jim Valvano, who was the coach there, and his he's dealing with sickness, but he's such a inspirational figure and kind of funny, and it's a lot. So it was worth it for that. The Guru of Go. This was a lot about Paul Westhead. And he was kind of run and gun Lakers, but then he had to leave because of all that stuff with Magic Johnson, which we don't even need to get into. No. But then it talks about his Loyola teams. And there is someone who has like a mysterious death. And it kind of goes into that a bit too. So that was interesting.
I love a mystery.
Well, it's not so mysterious because he dies like on the court.
Oh,
but
so not at all.
But also that's mysterious. Like, why?
Why did he die? Yeah.
Why did this high school or college athlete die on the floor? Bad Boys. Bad Boys is about the late 80s, early 90s Pistons teams. And these are teams I will defend to the death because they are so overlooked, and it's ridiculous because we always talk about who's the greatest of all time because that's how basketball discourse is. You can't just talk about something. You have to be like, oh, well, Michael Jordan was better. And like, yeah, okay, that's not the conversation here.
We're not arguing about this.
But the Bad Boys, Detroit Pistons teams, they were rough. They would injure people and they'd get injured themselves and they would just beat you down. And that's how they won. And people talk about how like, oh, any team now could destroy those teams because of the skill. And it's like, yeah, but you'd get your ankles broken before you got a chance to use your skill. Like, you have to realize it goes both ways. And these bad boys teams also were the only teams that beat the Bird Celtics, the Magic Lakers, and the Jordan Bulls. So it's always between those teams. Who's the better one? And there's only one team that beat all of them. And it was the bad boys. So I might be biased, but man, those teams were something else. So that is a very interesting look at it, though. The documentary was good. I Hate Christian Laetner. That is a documentary about exactly what you'd expect. Christian Laetner was one of the most hated players and one of the most beloved to certain people. If you're a Duke fan, you love him, but Duke is also like a hated team itself. And I hate Christian Laetner. I hated him so much. I was like 6, 7 years old, and I hated him more than any player. And he was he was a great college player. Amazing college player. And that's part of the reason you hate him so much. But he was playing for Duke, who were always kind of the villains. They always had the best teams, and they always had the best recruiters. And they won so many championships. And he was this like pretty boy, and my Wolverines lost. So it's talking about all of these kind of players, but mostly about Christian Laetner and why he's so hated. And it was really interesting. And I still hate Duke Christian Laetner, but as a guy, he's fine. No hate. This Magic Moment. This was about the early 90s Orlando Magic teams, and it was such an exciting time for the NBA and for Orlando. There's a player you've probably heard of, Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
You've heard of him.
Yes.
He played there along with Penny Hardaway, and it just talks about what could have been. And that's such a thing that plagues that franchise and the city of Orlando, of like, they're so close to greatness, and if certain things had gone a certain different way, they could have been a dynasty, but Shaq was a dick and got out of there because he didn't want to share the spotlight, and Penny got hurt. And I always disliked Shaquille O'Neal growing up. I didn't like him at all. And people now think like, well, how could you not like this guy? He's so fun. That's not who Shaq was then. Oh. And now there's interviews with him, and he's like, yeah, I was wrong. I was selfish, and I left. So he's grown, right? Because he was also just like 23 or something at the time. So a lot of 23-year-olds are dicks.
23-year-old who's the best at what he does and has lots of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like you're going to be a dick.
And he was.
It's a rare person who isn't a dick in that situation.
And then there's No Crossover, the Trial of Allen Iverson. And I also watched Not a Game and Iverson. And I think I kind of got all three of those a little bit mixed up. But Allen Iverson, I still think, is one of the most important figures of that generation, not just in sports, but in American culture. And I don't think people realize how many cultural battles were fought in the United States that Allen Iverson was the linchpin of. Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard his name. I don't know who he is, though.
Okay. So Allen Iverson, this movie, the Trial of Allen Iverson, deals with his literal trial as a 17-year-old. Oh. So at this point, he's maybe the best high school player in America. He might have also been the best high school football player.
Oh.
So he's well known, and he's in a town in Virginia. And this incident happens where it's essentially a group of white kids and a group of black kids get into a fight in a bowling alley. There's video of it, and it's just madness. People are throwing chairs. Everyone's punching everyone. Out of that, the only charges are against 5 black men. And out of that, Allen Iverson gets sentenced to 15 years in prison. There's so many things that led to that specific sentence. First, they tried him as an adult. Mm-hmm. Which, why? When everyone involved was under 18,
yeah.
Why is this one person tried as an adult?
Why aren't they all?
Very curious.
Mm-hmm.
Then, only black people were charged. Also, it's a brawl. Everyone is all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be charged with anything, but it seems very bizarre with a big fight that only one side is charged.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they charged him with, rather than like a misdemeanor, They gave him a felony charge of maiming by mob. Maiming by mob was a law that was put on the books for lynchings.
Oh, so they used
If you were involved in a lynching, you're part of the mob that was skinning someone, hanging them up, castrating them, setting them on fire. You can be guilty even if you're just like holding one of the pitchforks.
Right.
He's the only one charged with that. So he doesn't actually have to throw a punch or do anything because he's part of the mob.
Right.
There is video, and some people say, look, that is him there. He threw a chair. Very debatable. So debatable that that video was never used in the trial that convicted him.
Oh.
So he's convicted, but they never used the video. So even if people say like that guy there is him, you can't tell. It's grainy early 90s footage, and a guy throws a chair. About 9 people you can see throwing chairs.
Right.
But they picked him, and they say that one there, that 6th guy on the right, that's Allen Iverson, and that's why he's going. Because that chair hit a white woman. Cut her, knocked her unconscious, gave her a concussion. So this trial is playing out, and it just divides the city, because there's all these conspiracy theories of he plays for the other team, not that hometown team. That hometown team had won every championship until Allen Iverson came along, won basketball and football. So they're saying, oh, it's because of that. I don't think that. People say, oh, he was dating the judge's granddaughter, and that's why he was sending a message. I don't believe that either.
Yeah.
What I do believe is this was clearly stacked against him, right? Because why would that charge be brought up then? It's not maiming. Someone got hit with a chair, and that is unfortunate, and whoever did it should be charged, even if that's Allen Iverson. There's rules if it's not exactly consensual, but it's called is it called free combat? When like 2 people are like, okay, we're fighting now.
Right.
And those rules were not applied at all. Only to the people who happen to be white. Allen Iverson and his friends also say that this started because the white kids were calling them the N-words. So then that comes into it. And this town is just split. And the documentary also, I thought, shows you very explicitly like, oh, this was done with malice to get this guy, Allen Iverson. That's what it very much seems like the documentary tells me. I remember when this came out, a friend of mine at work watched it, and she was saying like, oh man, how did Allen Iverson ever get out of prison? He should still be in there. And I was like, wait, did you watch this documentary? And we watched the same thing. And that's the conclusion she came to. And there are a lot of people in the documentary. And now I realize the documentary is very fair because it gives equal weight to people who are saying, every time a black person gets arrested, they think it's racism. But let me tell you, and they say like, this guy should be guilty. He should be locked up. His type of people are always doing this. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, you sound incredibly biased and you have also no evidence.
Yeah.
So, but just like any discourse where I can say like, oh, well, everything Donald Trump says is a lie and I can prove it. But some people just don't see it like that, right? So I guess this is a very fair documentary because some people watch it and take the exact opposite from it.
Wild.
So he gets sentenced to 15 years as a 17-year-old for throwing a chair, which there's no video evidence of, even though there was video of the event. Some of his friends also get sentenced to, I think, a maximum of 5 years, and the minimum was community service.
Oh.
And you'd think a big fight in a bowling alley and you threw something, yeah, community service. That kind of seems fitting. 15 years seems just insane.
That's so much time.
For a guy who, like, he had a rough life too. And they brought up in the trial, like, oh, he missed so much school. He missed school because he would take care of his baby siblings, because they had no one to take care of them, right? So he was home with the kids, and that's why he was missing school. And they're like, oh, he had a bad attitude. Yeah, he did. Allen Iverson can be a dick. And I think that's why it's the most interesting. It's not like Bill Russell, when you're like, this man is like a king among men. Look how scholarly, look how eloquent, look how much pride he takes in everything. We only seem to respect black athletes when they're the exemplar, like someone like Bill Russell or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Allen Iverson's just a guy. Like, yeah, he has a bad attitude. That's fair, but that's not something that you should, that someone can be convicted of. Mm-hmm. But it was.
Huh.
And not to mention the guy he started the fight with was a white guy who had previous convictions. None of the people charged ever had a record. But the people Allen Iverson and his friends claim started the fight with them, they did. But that's not brought into it, of course. So it seems like a real railroad job, and he would have missed out on his entire college and NBA career, but the governor eventually pardoned him after less than a year in prison.
Oh.
So that's how he got out. It had to be, he lucked out. I didn't sort of have to say he lucked out after being, getting like just fucked over like that, but after getting fucked over, he lucked out in the governor just newly elected, I think. And that's what he did. And he got him out, or else like none of us would have ever heard of Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
Or he'd be one of the greatest what ifs of all time.
Yeah.
But he's such an interesting case because then he goes on, he never gets to play his senior year of high school. He studies on his own, graduates, and doesn't get to be there with his classmates or anything like that because he's doing it in prison. Because he did go to like adult prison for those 10 months.
Which is wild.
Yeah. And then he still gets a scholarship to Georgetown, goes on. It's a #1 recruit coming out of Georgetown, gets drafted #1 overall. And, oh, you know why you know Allen Iverson? Because we're talking about practice.
Oh.
Not a game.
Yeah.
Not a game. Practice. Oh, you know what? I once said that my thing of the week was I was gonna explain the practice speech to you because it keeps coming up. So, I'm on a roll. Let's just keep going.
Okay.
Okay. So he gets drafted and he's one of, if not the best player in the NBA. He wins an MVP. He's the scoring champion a few years in a row. And he takes his team to the finals, and that team had no business being in the finals. It was him. He carried them there. And real basketball fans will be like, well, his shooting percentage was junk and he's a ball hog. Like, I don't care. He was an MVP. He led the league in scoring, 3 years in a row? You can't be nobody and do that. You got to be good. So that's who Allen Iverson is. And if you're not familiar with the practice speech, it has been used so often. It was always a fun soundbite on like top 10 soundbites ever. And it's funny because he says the word practice like 28 times in 15 seconds or something.
Right.
That's an exaggeration, but you know what? I'll put a clip of it in right here.
If I can't practice, I can't practice, man. I'm hurt, I'm hurt. Simple as that. It ain't about that. It's not about that at all. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but it's easy to talk about. It's easy to sum it up when you just talk about practice. We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice. Well, Coach, I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice. Not the game that I go out there and die for and play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that, man? We're talking about practice. I know I'm supposed to be there. I know I'm supposed to lead by example. I know that. And I'm not shoving it aside, like it don't mean anything. I know it's important. I do. I honestly do. But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice? We talking about practice, man. We talking about practice. We talking about practice. We ain't talking about the game. We talking about practice, man. When you come in the arena and you see me play, don't you?
Absolutely.
You see me give everything I got, right?
Absolutely.
But we talking about practice right now.
But it's an issue that you're
We talking about
you to raise.
Man, I hear you. It's funny to me too. I mean, it's strange to me too. But we talking about practice, man. We're not even talking about the game, the actual game, when it matters. We talking about practice.
It's always on sports shows. We were watching Ted Lasso, and they used it there. Ted Lasso says the whole speech when he's talking to Jamie, but he changes it around, right? And it's a part of pop culture at this point, and it's a joke to people. They're like, this guy, this prima donna athlete, because now this is the narrative of him. He has a bad attitude. He's a prima donna. He's selfish because they're asking him like, well, why were you late to practice? And he comes out with this speech. And that's what we think of the speech. It's not until years later that I actually watched the full speech. He adds something that always gets cut, and it's cut for good reason. We hear all the practice parts, but at the end, he says, I'm upset for one reason, because I'm in here. I lost. And he had just had a year of that was plagued with injuries. Earlier that day, he gets in a huge screaming match with his coach, and he's lost in the playoffs. His season is over. And earlier that year, his best friend was murdered. In the last 10 years, 7 of his friends were murdered.
Wow.
Like he came from a rough area, right? So he says, I'm upset for one reason, because I'm in here. I lost my best friend. I lost him. And I lost this year. Everything is just going downhill for me, as far as my life. And I'm dealing with this. My best friend is dead. And we lost. And this is what I have to go through for the rest of my summer until the season is all over again. So he's saying, like, there's so much going on. I'm regarded as one of, if not the best player in the world. My friend died. My season is over. I'm recovering from injuries. And you want to ask why I was late for practice. We don't get it framed like that, right? Just I didn't know all of these things. When I first heard of him in high school, it's like, oh, this thug throwing chairs. Yes, lock him up. And now he's this prima donna athlete that's always late to practice. Who cares about him? We don't get any context because that's how media treats guys like him. And guys like him, I mean, he had cornrows. He had tattoos. He wore chains.
Right.
And now you're like, yeah, that's cool. Who doesn't? Like the guy at Starbucks does.
Yeah.
In the 90s, that was not the thing. The NBA was scared of Allen Iverson. They implemented a dress code because of Allen Iverson.
Oh.
He was wearing like baseball jerseys and chains. And because of him, Stern, who's a piece of shit and I don't like him, implemented a dress code. Like, no, only suits and ties now. And they tried to make some rules about tattoos, but they couldn't get that through the players union. But it's because of him. The whole idea of basketball and hip hop going together, that's Allen Iverson.
Wow.
Baggy pants, that's Allen Iverson. Like all of these things came from him and he was just vilified for it. And I'm also not an Allen Iverson fan. But the fact that there's just no nuance into how the world saw him is criminal because he wasn't this exemplar of being like soft-spoken and respectful like Jackie Robinson. Like that's how Jackie Robinson was allowed to become the first black baseball player in the major leagues, not because he was the best black baseball player, but the one that would be able to put up with the most bullshit.
Right.
And Allen Iverson wasn't someone who's going to put up with bullshit. He was a bit of an asshole, and that's fine. It's just like how far he was vilified because of how he looked. He's such an interesting guy, and I kind of forgot what we were talking about because I just ended up talking about Allen Iverson for the last while, and I'm not even a big fan because he doesn't play the kind of game that I particularly like. But the way he was treated was criminal, sometimes very literally criminal. Yeah. So, go watch some Allen Iverson documentaries. All right, that brings us into the 90s still. Oh, there was The Last Dance. You know what? Everyone's talked about The Last Dance. Yeah. It's very famous. Go listen to something else. I think it's fine.
Go listen to something else.
Untold, The Rise and Fall of And One. This was a really interesting one. And One is a basketball brand breaking through at a time when it was... Honestly, Adidas wasn't even a name in basketball at the time. It was Nike, Reebok, and Fila was kind of there then. And then this new company comes up and the And One mixtape tour and like marketing of street ball. It's all very interesting. So that's a really good one. The Redeem Team. This was a garbage documentary. It tried to play the American Olympic basketball team as underdogs. And they were a team of all All-Stars, almost all Hall of Famers, playing against teams who had maybe one player with an NBA experience. And they're like, ooh, they're such underdogs. Can they win? Yes, they can. Anything less than winning every game by 30 points is a disappointment.
Right.
I don't know. There's No Place Like Home. This was also a junk documentary. It's a fanboy movie. He got it financed so he could do what he wanted. It's poorly done as a documentary. It's one of the, it's not good. So No Place Like Home, don't watch it. And let's do one last one, because I talked about Allen Iverson for too long, so we'll cut some things out. Which one did I like? Ooh, Untold, Malice at the Palace. Malice at the Palace was this one specific evening when the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons got into a huge fight in November of 2004. And it was the biggest thing in basketball for like a few years. It was this huge brawl, including fans.
What?
And this is another one where it was presented a certain way, and I admit I bought in. I was like, Ron Artest is a crazy person. And he is like, he actually does have like mental health issues. But at the time I was like, look at this fucking crazy asshole. It's all his fault. And then I watched this documentary and I was like, oh, I was wrong. Huh. Is Ron Artest kind of cool now? I don't know about that. But it's a very good documentary about how easy it is to judge something based on facts that we are told, and then when we actually get to hear it from people on both sides, you realize, oh, I did not know what was going on and I should not have made such a judgment. So yeah, this is a documentary that actually changed my mind on something, which, you know, probably doesn't happen too often. So go check out Malice at the Palace. And that is the end of my basketball documentary roundup. I think I got a little.
Learned so much.
I did get a little impassioned when talking about Allen Iverson.
A little bit.
But yeah, he's a very interesting figure.
He sounds very polarizing.
Yes, he was. He was so hated and so beloved. And I was just like, yeah, he's cool. I respect him, though.
Good.
But let's not talk any more about Allen Iverson. Samantha, what's your thing of the fortnight?
My thing of the fortnight is a book. And nobody's surprised. It's called Star-Crossed, A True Romeo and Juliet Story in Hitler's Paris, by Heather Dune Macadam and Simon Worrall. And it's a historical, I don't want to say fiction because it's based on like journals from these people. So it's like a historic telling of their story, which is kind of interesting. So it's about Annette Zellman, who is a Jewish teenager, and a Catholic poet named Jean. And they fall in love in the midst of occupied Paris. And as the rights and freedoms of the Jewish people in Paris are like taken away, they kind of have to deal with that and see how they can still be together because it was illegal, and also how they can protect their families and make sure that they don't get sent away to work camps, which is what they were calling them. I found this like really interesting from like a historical point of view, because I don't read a lot about the Holocaust, and I found it really interesting to hear this from like a young person's point of view, because usually you hear it just from like the history book side of it. And so it was really interesting to see how these two kind of artists in Paris dealt with it, and then also what kind of happened to them throughout the occupation, and then the kind of tragic and sad ending of how many people in their lives passed away. And then the epilogue, that's the one at the end, right?
It is.
Okay. The epilogue has some more like kind of facts and information that ties it up really nicely. It kind of was more just facts and less story. So it was kind of a nice way to tie it all together. So I would recommend this book if you are interested in a really great love story, if you're interested in this time in history, and then also if you're interested in any kind of historical nonfiction retelling of a time in history. I said history twice, but yeah, it was really, really good.
Was this an audiobook you listened to?
Yes.
Did it have dual narrators?
It did, yes.
How was that?
It was good. It was good. It felt very much like it made sense that there were two narrators because a lot of it was the couple. It's also kind of being told by a family member who survived the occupation. And so you kind of get their telling of these people's lives as well. So it was good to have kind of a breakup of the voices, which I really enjoy when they do that with audiobooks.
Do you find that almost 50% of new fiction has more than one narrator these days?
Yeah, they've become like a whole production.
It's so common now. I kind of just look for a new book that has one narrator, and it's hard to find.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll keep reading old books.
Yeah, well, you were going to do that anyway.
I read something from the last 10 years this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good work.
It was called A Head Full of Ghosts, and it was pretty good.
So many ghosts. A head full. Wow.
That's a lot of ghosts.
That's a lot of ghosts. Yeah, so check it out. It's called Star-Crossed, a true Romeo and Juliet story in Hitler's Paris by Heather Dune Macadam and Simon Worrall.
Also, double authors seems to happen a lot more these days.
Yeah.
I wonder how that works. Are they a team that write together often?
I am not 100% sure.
I always think writing a novel with someone else would be very hard. I feel like I write screenplays with other people, and for some reason that I have no issue with.
Yeah.
The novels are different.
Novels, I don't know, it seems very like personal and like it's all coming from your head. So collaborating on that might be hard.
Or I wonder if one of them wrote one character because there's dual
maybe.
Narrators. That might be good, and it kind of gives each
Two
person
voices.
their own voice.
Yeah. It doesn't look like they've written anything else together. So I wonder if this was like something that they were suggested by their editors or like, I don't know.
Yeah, it happens a lot now. I'm always curious how that comes up.
Yeah. So, Indy, it's time.
Is it?
What's our big watch for next week?
All right. Our big watch for next week is the horror fantasy comedy. I don't know if any...
So many genres.
I don't know if any of those words are actually correct.
Okay.
But the movie, even that, maybe. Troll 2.
Oh.
But not Trolls World Tour, because there's Trolls 2.
Uh-huh.
This is not that. This is from 1990. We watched last week a movie called Troll.
Yes.
Could you describe that movie in a sentence or two?
Madness.
Okay, one word. That's all you need. Yeah. It's also bad.
Bad.
Weird.
It's like all over the place.
Yeah, insane, kind of fun.
Yeah.
But inexplicable.
Inexplicable is a good one. Yeah.
So there is a sequel to that movie, but not really. So I don't even know. So let's just go with this. A couple years ago, we watched Mac and Me because my thing that I love, and you should too, is watching a bad movie and having fun laughing at it. And it was something that you had never done, and you've kind of been getting into a little bit recently. So do you remember Mac and Me?
Yeah.
Did you have any fun watching it?
Yeah, it was fun.
I always say that Mac and Me is one of my favorite bad movies. The Room is a very famous one as well. I like Miami Connection is one of my favorite bad movies, but also Troll 2. So we're going to watch the movie Troll 2 from 1990. It is available for free streaming on Canopy if you use that and you have access to that with a library card. And we're going to watch this movie and have fun and laugh at it. It's Troll 2. It has nothing to do with Troll, the movie, at all. It is a sequel, they say. But nothing to do with it.
Not related.
In fact, how many trolls would you think would be in a movie called Troll 2?
2?
At least.
At least 2.
No trolls.
What?
No.
What?
Sometimes
I don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll get used to it because you'll be saying that a lot.
Okay.
Like, I don't understand. Did that kid just get on the dinner table and pee on the dinner plates? Why would someone do that? Why is a movie called Troll 2 when there's no trolls and they're explicitly referred to as goblins? I don't know. It's not good. It is fun. So we're going to watch that. It's a movie where if you are a dentist who contributed a little bit of money, you know what? Starring role. Get in there. It's just, it's whatever.
Wow. Okay.
It was directed by a man named Claudio Fragasso. He also wrote it, and he's very interesting because he thinks like he did something great, and he did not.
Ooh.
There is also a movie called Best Worst Movie, and that is a documentary about the making of Troll 2, its resurgence as kind of like a cult favorite as being a bad movie, and now it screens all over the place still to this day. And you can go watch it, and you watch it with your friends, and you laugh at it. That's what it's for. So one of the actors, I think the kid, who was just a kid in the movie, is now older, and he made this movie about it, kind of like exploring how this happened and kind of celebrating this love of bad movies. But one of the best things is the director is like, there's nothing funny about this movie. This is a piece of art. And he thinks it's great still.
He's like totally serious about it.
Yeah, he's very serious about it. So you can watch that. It's actually available for free on YouTube. I'll watch that. You don't necessarily need to. And I can just throw in some little tidbits for when we watch it.
Perfect.
Next week. I actually did see Best Worst Movie and Troll 2 as like a midnight doubleheader, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And that was the first time I had seen it. And it's so much fun. So go watch Troll 2. Watch it with friends. I don't know, get drunk, laugh at it. That's what it's there for.
Great.
If you start watching it and you're like, oh, this is terrible. Yes. Yes, it is.
Correct.
And lean into that. Have fun with it.
Okay.
So Troll 2, available on Canopy and probably some other places. And if you want some extra information, watch Best Worst Movie, which is free on YouTube currently.
Excellent. Okay.
What do you think? Are you excited for this one?
I am optimistic about it.
If nothing else, it's short and it's not hard to watch. You don't have to do any work on this one.
I'm okay with that. That sounds great. Let's go. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
How the hell can I make my teammates better by practicing?